Hey guys, what's up? This is going to be the first video in a series covering some of the more technical aspects of the game. You don't see a lot of coverage of Ghost Recon's fandoms in general, and specifically with regards to the technical aspects. And I'll be talking about things like scopes, armor inserts, weapon setups, and so on. And this video is going to be covering scopes. So having said that, scopes are, I'd say, a pretty complicated issue. Let's have a look first. Let's go to the asphalt. So most players will say, "Hey, this isn't even a question, right? What's the scope everyone uses? All the pros. It's open reflex, all right?" Yeah, this is the scope that people use. It's the one it's the most expensive scope you can get, and yeah, it's supposed to be the best scope, right? It has a wide open perspective. You can see everything, and so on. And in the firing range, at least for me, it performs okay. You know, it's not too bad. But here's the thing about scopes. Scopes are really a matter of preference. For a long time, I followed what's essentially it's a dogma almost, I think, that open reflex is objectively the best scope. But when it comes to scopes, there's no such thing as objectively the best scope. I mean, there are people who like different scopes, have a different feeling, and depending on what your conditions are, meaning, you know, what your screen size is, how you play the game, and so on, the open reflex is not necessarily going to be the scope for you. Now, it's true that people like Mick, H, and the pros all use the open reflex, and most of the top-tier generals use open reflex. And in the beginning, and for a long time, I mistakenly followed that advice, and I thought, well, everyone else is using open reflex, why don't I? And I tried it out, and for me, I play on a 17-inch screen on a laptop. The scope does nothing for me. Yeah, it magnifies things slightly, but that dot to me is tiny, and it doesn't really help me aim in very well. Now, I could try it again and again, but every time I've tried it, I've had pretty much what I'd consider a lack of success. So what you need to do is experiment a lot. Now, let me give you an idea of how many scopes I've experimented with. One of my oldest guns is the AK-200M. And if you look at all the scopes I own for this, Assault 3.5, 1.5, Reflex Small, Open Reflex, Phantom, SUSAT, PSO, M21, and so on. The only one I didn't have is the Reflex Full, because it's the basic one. And, you know, you got to experiment a lot. Now, there really are two kinds of scopes, more or less. I mean, there's some variation. You have Assault 3.5 and 1.5. But for the most part, you have a one-time magnification scope, as you clearly know if you play the game, and the 4 times. Now, the trade-off with the 4-time scope is better focusing. I mean, you can look. The magnification is a lot greater than you would get from a ×1 scope. As you can see, I mean, you can get a clear targeting from really long ranges. Even at 130, you can pretty much see the targets clearly for the most part, and you know you can aim in. Of course, I'm burst firing right now. But the trade-off, however, is generally speaking, if you want to auto fire, the recoil tends to be significantly greater. Yeah, that's just the way it is. It's certainly controllable. And at long ranges, medium to long ranges, I'd say that SUSAT and scopes that magnify 4 times. Another one, for example, of course, many of you know, is the PSO1. It's a really great long-range scope. It's called medium range, but I think it's very effective at long range. You have that wide. Look at how great that scope is. That wide area where you can see pretty much everything. But But the problem, of course, with these scopes is, in addition to the recoil, is that, I mean, you don't really need this kind of magnification at short range, and you lose track of all the other targets, right? So, I mean, it's great in a way, but you know, you can't really see things very well after a while. You know, at 60 meters, you know, it becomes manageable. You can see the entire area, the entire area of targets, right? This is probably my favorite long-range scope. I don't really use them because they're impractical for reasons of recoil and some other reasons. Like I said, that it's just a short-range combat. It just becomes really impractical, especially when you're you're crouching, you're out of cover and things like that. But I mean, if you're in a position like this against an enemy and scope, I mean, you can do it, I guess, but you know. So those are the long-range scopes, right? And they offer benefits and trade-offs. And you know, this is some intermediary. For a long time, I used the Phantom scope because it gave you the option of basically going both ways, of looking short range, and of course, for greater recoil, a ×4 scope. You know, that's the difference, say, between this magnification and this magnification. But of course, you have more recoil. Even the burst fire becomes kind of less accurate, less precise, and so on. I like the scope, but I think it just becomes more practical to use ×1 magnification scopes. Now, this really is a matter of preference. Yeah, there are people who love the open reflex on everything. They would use it on this as well. And for some people that would work. I don't, like I said, I don't like the open reflex. I find there's nothing for me to aim with. Basically, it's hard. I can't really kind of instantly focus in the way I'd like to. So for me, it's really a choice between the M21 reflex, which people don't understand why I use it. It's pretty simple because basically you see that dot, it's pretty big, and it's giving me a very good idea of where the target is. And even at this range, I can pretty much full auto at 100 meters with the AK-200, and I'm still hitting the target, more or less. And burst fire, of course, is quite accurate, quite deadly, so on. My favorite scope, however, and I'm not just saying this for my, this is my favorite scope watching my video, is definitely the Cobra sight. And they had a limited offer, which I bought a whole bunch of them, but I have a limited number of them, so I don't really apply them to many weapons. But why do I like the Cobra scope the most? Well, for one thing, the reticule is great, I find. I mean, it's a Cobra, right? And in between that little dot, that's where you're aiming. And, it's clear. I can see the target. There's my target. I'm firing. Well, at this range, you burst fire. For me, the Cobra scope is the best. It has a nice it doesn't kind of overclog the screen like some scopes do. I think it's better than the M21 for the most part. I mean, I can try it at 130. And yeah, this is definitely my scope of preference. The reason being, like I said, the way the reticule works. I find it easy to identify the target and then fire. I mean, this range is a bit difficult with the headshots, but I mean, you can pretty much still get it. 170 at that range. Funny. And that's without Magnum. And more importantly, for the short ranges, it's not overly powerful, so I can just kind of scope in if need be and, go to town. Instant scope in, something like that. So for me, it's really a choice between this is my preference for most, but I have a limited number of them, or the M21. Different weapons give you different feelings. For example, with the Asphalt, the Asphalt SV, I use the the Cobra as well for the same reasons. But you know, for a long time I used the M21 reflex as well, just because I didn't have access to the Cobra scopes. But what I'm saying here is quite simple, simply that scopes are a matter of preference. Don't listen to people like Mick. I have nothing but respect for Mick, but to say open reflex is the best. Yeah, it's the best for him. But I tried a long time using the open reflex, and I basically had no success whatsoever. And I just kept on thinking, well, you know, I have no success with this. What's going on? And I just figured stuff out, and I found a scope or two that I really like. And you know, you just got to go with your guts when it comes to scopes. Scopes are not an objective thing. It's not like saying the Asphalt H SV WDG is objectively a better weapon than the F2000 SV. That's true in every way. It's a better weapon. That's not to say the M21 reflex is worse than the open reflex, or vice versa. It's more, I mean, it's less expensive, but that doesn't really mean anything. So yeah, when it comes to scopes, go with your gut. Play with the different scopes, test them out. If you have good experiences with one, keep on using it, see how it works. If you have bad experiences with some scopes, don't use them. I've had nothing but bad experiences with open reflex. I dislike it. And as you can see, I'm a pretty good player even though I don't use the open reflex. It's not going to kill you not to use it if you don't like it. So go with the scope that you feel most comfortable with. And you know, it's just a question of preference. You like more magnification at the cost of more recoil and practicality, then go with a ×4 like a SUSAT or a PSO. If you like the ×1, then you know, have your look and try those out. Or maybe you like a 1.5 Assault or a 3.5 or a Phantom. Phantom I used for a long time. Try them out, test them out thoroughly. Don't just go by the word of you know, the elite players who say, oh, you know, open reflex, that's the way to go, period. It's the way to go for them. It might not be the way to go for you. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you hit that like button, it'd be much appreciated. Everyone take care. Bye-bye.